Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. My name is Jennifer Otter-Bickerdike, and I am the author of Why Vinyl Matters and also the music ambassador for BIMM. The reason we're doing this event tonight is because we are dedicated to celebrating and engaging with music in different ways and seeing how music can bring people together. We wanted to look at, is the protest song still a thing? Is it still powerful? We're going to talk about the protest song in the current political climate. I'd like to introduce some fabulous colleagues who are going to be joining me on this topic. The first person is my dear friend, Simone Odaranile from the Go Team, drummer for the Go Team. Next, we have the very handsome and extremely talented Space from Black Futures. He's also produced the last 3 Idols albums. Space, come on up here, join us. And if you see me sweating with nervousness, which I am, it's because one of my personal heroes is here. A Grammy Award-winning British film director, DJ, musician. I'm shaking because I love him so much. Don Letts.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, I'm going to start with... Space, I'm going to start with you. Is that okay? Is protest music dead? And can I just frame this for you? I remember getting that first Rage Against the Machine record when I was 18 years old with the insane cover of the Buddhist monk on fire and being like moved to tears and also getting several speeding tickets listening to some of those songs. And when I listen to those songs now, it seems like nothing has changed. Is there still protest music like that, do you think?
Yes. All right, I'm done.
Yeah, drop mic. Do you think it just emerges when it's needed, when the political climate is such?
It depends. Like, I think we have a little bit of arrogance in Western culture to think that all music and all protest music revolves around Western culture. So, yes, all the time there's protest music. You know, like, and there is now here. You know, there always is on the fringes, even when it is not kind of a popular zeitgeist. You know, there's always been anarcho-punk and other things going on. I spent some time out in Nepal with a folk singer out there who is not very well known, but he's kind of known as the Woody Guthrie of Nepal. He sings a lot about the caste system and sexism within their culture, and travels from village to village. And you know, going around the world, you can talking to people and meeting people and recording with people, you tend to find out that everyone is facing constant struggle, and there is constant need for protest and people to speak out and have strong voices. So I think no is
Let's
the
go home. He's hit it on the nail.
Yeah.
No, really, he's hit the nail on the head. In the West, you know, I think the youth, a lot of youth, you can't say all of them, become increasingly complacent. But for a lot of people in this planet, music ain't just about partying and selling you shit. It's an integral part of their culture and still a functional tool for genuine social change. And you've got to travel the world to really recognize that. But in the West, it's become something different. If it exists at all. No, it exists. Of course it exists.
I mean, Don, I put this question as maybe one to bring up, but I'll just drop this anyway. In 2006, John Mayer had this song that I found offensive, and it was called "Waiting for the World to Change." And that to me was what was wrong with the music industry at that moment, like waiting for the world to change instead of being that change. So is that kind of what you're saying?
No, the problem there is you're saying you're waiting for the music industry, and you don't wait for them for shit. They've never created anything. You know, the struggle starts at grassroots level and then works its way up. Certainly in the, 21st century, it does feel like for the first 10 years, there was this kind of, I don't know, it's like everyone was in a coma. You know, it's almost like people were scared to move forward. You know, beginning of the 21st century, all of a sudden you had, all these things, I love this, and I love the 60s, I love the 70s, I love last week. And it was like people were literally scared to move forward. But things have become so dread now that people have been forced to become proactive, and that's why we've got, global insurrection. I mean, it's kicking off all over the place. How much music has to do with that, I don't know.
Simone, so let me ask you this then. Do you think music can be a vehicle to get some of those ideas out on a larger scale? Like you and I were talking about Stormzy.
Yeah, I think if you're in a certain position and you have like a platform and you have a voice that young people are listening to, whether you like grime music or not, whatever your preference may be, I think if you're a person that has like or is in that position, then you should speak your mind. I mean, a lot of people are. I mean, look at the 2017 election. You've got grime artists tweeting and tweeting and tweeting, using social media to promote their, beliefs and their opinions on what is happening today, right now. And a lot of young people are looking at that. They're taking that in. They're believing it. And you saw a rise in young people voting. So I do think, yes, obviously music genres, it can all be your preference, but if you are in a position to, and you have a voice and people are listening, like Stormzy, I think that you should use it.
So Simone, like you and I have talked about this before, like you're young, you're mixed race, you're queer. How much is it important though for you to be you as a musician and someone that has definitely a point of view that may not be the white straight man, for lack of a better thing, but how much is it your responsibility, or do you feel responsible to be getting that out there?
I've spent a long time avoiding things like this. Look, I play drums, and this is my worst nightmare. Sitting with the spotlight on me, talking in front of people that or talking amongst people that might have a broader knowledge of mine. But if I can bring anything from the way I've grown up and the things that I've experienced, if I can say the one thing that someone might pick up on, or if I can give my opinion and someone might agree or take something from it, then I think I should, because I didn't necessarily have all of those factors. Yes, there are women, yes, there are black mixed race people, yes, there are queer people, but having all three of those at times, I did might have felt a bit defeated, or I experienced some struggles. So now that I guess I have opportunities like this to speak my mind, or say a few things that could encourage people, I think it's worth doing, even though I'm absolutely petrified.
Spaceman, go to you. What makes for a good protest song?
The folk singer Steve Oakes, he said that a protest song is a song that is so blatant you can't mistake it for bullshit. So in a way that it is a protest. It is a declaration of some kind of opposing something. I think that makes a good protest song, where people don't have to read through it, they just understand its intention.
So simple.
Yeah, potentially.
John, what do you
If it's got a good groove, that definitely helps to sugar the pill. No matter how righteous the words are, if it ain't got a groove, people ain't going to listen. Ask Tracy Chapman, man.
I love that first Tracy Chapman record.
I know you would. It sounds racist, but us black folk, it didn't do shit for us, really.
Do you think that was catering to white people?
No, not at all. No, I didn't say that. But for a certain sector, black people like a message with a groove. It's as simple as that, really. Things like Bob Marley's Get Up, Stand Up, hard and straight to the point, but it's got that vibe that motivates you. Songs of Linton Kwesi Johnson, same thing. Great bass line. So you've got to have a good tune.
Yeah.
You got to be saying something and have a good groove.
I think repetition as well. I'm like that. I guess I'm a drummer. Anything that's like in the pocket, really groovy, but has like a repetition of what you're trying to say, just works for me.
And it is possible. I'm old school. I'm representing the last century here. I was born in 1956. I'm as old as rock and roll. But I grew up where there was a tradition of intelligent pop songs that were actually saying something. And maybe you didn't actually get it immediately, but it sort of permeated your skin, whether it be something like, Something in the Air, or, there's countless. The tunes of Sam Cooke and Nina Simone. When I was growing up, I didn't even realise they were political until I got much older and examined what they were actually saying, but they resonated in you, and they left this eternal vibe that actually crossed moments and informed movements from that time to this very day, I think that's the difference. I think in the 21st century, there are protest songs, but they're very much of the moment, and I don't know how much they are part of global movements, if that makes any sense.
But don't you think in order to be a protest song, it has to be of the moment? and that with the weight of history, you
Absolutely.
can put other
No,
stuff
and like I
on.
said, there are
Has to be
those
in-
moments out there, lots of them, but yeah, maybe the tunes ain't good enough.
You mentioned Nina Simone.
Yeah.
So, Goddamn Mississippi,
Tune.
yeah,
Yeah,
tune, but
tune.
it's in.
And you remember the hook.
Yeah,
That's the thing. They still appreciate the hook.
It was of a moment.
Absolutely.
She wrote
Absolutely.
it because of
What was going on,
what
that's
was
right.
going
Yeah,
on,
the whole
you know,
68
and so
thing.
there's kind of possibly sometimes to be truly kind of a protest song, maybe it has to be in protest of something
That's
like,
of the moment,
the
but part of
at
an
the time.
eternal struggle. Absolutely right.
Yeah.
Absolutely right.
This may sound
Not just a newspaper headline.
Do you think that this might sound a little bit silly, but now that music's more disposable than it was, when you're talking like Nina Simone, some of, you know, those are like classic big records, big voices, great lyrics, everything, check, check, check. But also, I talk to people about this a lot. The idea of like a cultural kind of tsunami. So Don, like when you and I were coming up, it's like our friends. There'd be bands that everybody knew, and if you didn't like them, you'd still know them. And now it's more niche. You know what I mean?
I think what it is when that music was made, the cultural landscape was so different. You have to understand that back in the day, music for most people was the only form of alternative information and inspiration. So it was absolutely vital, and it remained that way for the most half of the 20th century. The minute the digital age came in and social media came in, it was no longer the only source of those things, and it no longer became that vital. And I think that's what's changed, is the landscape in which the music is made and how we listen to it. I mean, back in the day when there's a couple of radio stations, a tune drops, you know, you have a collective synchronized experience that actually, you know, we all heard, I don't know, Alice Cooper, School's Out on the radio, and the next day you're all singing it at school. And that collective experience gave it an energy.
Yeah.
And that energy would actually turn into something. And I think now that the way information is disseminated, it's so fragmented that it dilutes its potential. Does that make any sense to you all?
I mean, that's happening in America. Not to talk about America, but that's what's happening there. We look at the democratic process. It's like I'm a vegan lesbian that likes organic wool. And
Hey, we've all got problems, girlfriend.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I see this in America. Like when you're looking at the candidates, they're so segmented. So instead of being able to come together on kind of like the wider overarching things, which is kind of what you're talking about,
Yeah.
Don, like to create something, it's almost like we're too self-absorbed.
I don't know. I've been thinking about it over the last couple of days, maybe, and that it seems now that maybe there's just more repetition in the themes. Like in America, I like to think of it as the dismantling of the American dream. There's so many songs, there's a flood of songs about people being disenfranchised by America, you know, and the idea of America, and that maybe it's less one thing is, you know, one song is important. It's maybe just the constant pushing of new ideas, of like generating a new language and a new narrative that is constant, not necessarily like, oh, it's so sad that one song can't do it. Maybe everyone needs to be constantly kind of keeping up with this rhetoric of protest and calling out.
And that's what we're seeing globally now, I think, with all this stuff kicking off all around the world. I think you're right. Those big, bold brushstrokes were something of another time, you know, almost more innocent times. And now is the question where things are so fragmented, we're into all these different tribes. And as long as they're all being proactive and not just ticking like on their fucking Facebook, the shit can still work. You know, we're all working towards a common goal. But those big get up, stand up moments, maybe they've had their day.
But that's a problem too. It's like, okay, like there's a word for it that I can't remember, but it's like the Facebook activist. Like, I'm gonna repost this, and I'm being socially engaged, and like that. There's a disengagement of things actually in the real world versus online.
Yeah, it's bullshit, isn't it?
It's difficult because if this is what people are using now, if this is the way we're going, social media, Twitter, Instagram, if that's the way things are going, then I kind of like the idea of seeing these sorts of subjects and artists promoting these sorts of subjects on their social media as opposed to other stuff. Yeah, of course, like people are just gonna go online, click like, be like, oh, look at me, I've liked this, I'm really involved. But there are also going to be other people out there that are thinking, oh, hang on a minute, what is this? Like, let's explore more. So I think there's two sides to like social media. There's one side where it's like, this is really shit, I can't believe we're going this way. But then there's also another side that's like, hang on a minute, everyone's using it now. Let's go with it. Let's use it to our advantage. Let's speak to young people because they are using it. Like the amount of stuff I get, the amount of work I get now that's through Instagram, not even emailing me, just messaging me on Instagram is ridiculous. Like,
Yeah,
so it's,
I mean, the bottom line is you're right. Social media ain't the problem. It's how we use it, somewhat obviously.
That's right, yeah.
You know, and there's lots of places in this planet where it's a vital lifeline to bring people together and also let the rest of the planet know what's going on. And in the West, you know, it's like, look at my ugly fucking kids and what I ate last night. You know, so social media is actually a cool thing. It's just us, that the weak part of the equation.
Do you think that an artist, and I kind of want to go down the line with this, do you think an artist has to sacrifice or change themselves to be politically active online? I mean, maybe this is probably a bad test group, but would it be, if you were to post something, Simone, that was, let's say, you and I were talking about the PC stuff before, when we were just talking between ourselves, do you think closely before you post something, or do you just do it?
I just do what I want, really.
But
then I guess I'm not as like high profile as others. There will be people that have a team of people around them telling them what they can and can't do, what they can and can't post. And then there'll be someone like me that I own all of my stuff and I can just basically do what I want. If I have an opinion and I feel that strongly about it, I'm going to post it because I know that's going to reach a large majority of people that I'm interested in it reaching. To sacrifice, I guess it depends on who you are and what part of your career you're in. But I mean, for me personally, I control all of my stuff. I do my own thing. I manage myself so that I'm free to post what I want when I want without having to think about it.
Space, what about you?
I think if you get to the point where you're not going to be honest and speak your mind, that maybe commerce has kind of weighed down your spirit slightly. I think you should say fuck that. You should always say how you feel. You have a platform, a social responsibility to be progressive and push the boundaries. If musicians aren't doing that, then you know, why bother? You know?
I agree.
There's a saying, what is it? In the times of social crisis, the truth is revolutionary. But I'm old school, man. I'm not really up on the whole fucking social media thing. I'm one of these dudes that's looking for an app that'll actually get rid of people. And I'm serious. I mean, you know, my friend's part of my head is kind of brain is full up. So yeah, I'm looking for something that get rid of people. And engaging with dickheads on social media, I got better things to do, really. And all this fucking, you can get, what is it? Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, WhatsApp, Messenger, email, and then text.
There's a lot.
Fuck, what the fuck?
I
want one place, messages here, tell me what the fuck's going on, I'll answer you. But I'm struggling with it. So yeah, I'm the wrong man to talk about social media.
I was going to ask you, do you
the BBC made me get it.
I was about to say, do you have it?
I do have it.
Yeah.
The BBC, when I got this, I've got a show on the BBC. And anyway, they said, right, you've got to have a social media presence. And from having nothing, I had a website, Twitter, Instagram, all of them. And I'm...
Yeah. No, but Don, I think, because
I'm old now. I'm sort of wallowing in my grumpiness. I'm sort of loving it, you know.
So, Space, I'm going to start with you. Does protest music only become commercially successful or mainstream when the things we protest start to impact the middle classes?
Do you understand that question?
Yeah.
Good. To explain it.
So
if
it affects the middle classes,
then it becomes...
you know, it goes in the charts. Fuck knows.
Yeah, no,
I don't know.
Well, like, let's talk. I'm not going to go off. Yeah, well, I'm just thinking like a cause, for example, Extinction Rebellion.
Yeah, I mean, the end of the world kind of unifies everyone, right? You know, everyone dying in a blaze of flames is kind of everyone's problem. So, yes, that should be, you know, like,
Number
it's
one
not
with the bullet.
surprising, right, that everyone is concerned about it.
But do you think everyone's concerned about it?
They should be. but no, maybe not. But, you know, things don't happen, you know, cultural opinion and social change doesn't happen that quickly, does it? It's like you can't just snap your fingers and change everyone's mind on everything straight away. You know, there's a certain amount of safety involved in being ignorant, because
And being old.
Yeah, and being old. It's not so scary when.
No, tell me about it. Well, they're talking about all these policies that are going to kick in 10 years' time. I'm like, really? I don't give a shit. I'm going to be dead.
Give a shit.
That's
I'm gone.
why I like.
And I've
Brian
got kids. I
Eno's
ain't supposed to say
chat
that
about
stuff, you know. But
we should all be thinking, and I like Brian Eno's kind of philosophy on this. He always talks about the long now, and
What does that mean? I don't know
that's
this.
that's thinking way beyond your influence, as you know, like your influence as a person across generations, way beyond when you're dead. Also, like when you're, you know, when you interact with other people, you're not just like a singular entity. You've got friction with other people all the time, and that should kind of, in my mind, I like to think that that influences how I treat other people and how I act in my lifetime, because it's fucking selfish to go, well, I don't care, I'm going to be dead, and then you're going to...
thanks. But I'm not being funny, but the future predictions. When people talk about the future, what's the other word that's always associated with the future? What kind of future do people talk about in movies, in books? What kind of future is it?
It's apocalyptic.
It's dystopian.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
imagine, even in the world, in the realm where you can use your imagination of film and literature, the only future that's projected is dystopian. So no wonder I'm like, yeah, fuck it, I'm going to be dead in 10 years' time. I'm like, right on. I mean, they can't even predict something that's good. Sorry, folks. The young people
This is
here.
a real downer.
The young people in here.
Simone, bring us back to something good.
Going back to like well, there's a band called Architects. I don't know if any of if any of you know them, but they're becoming like more mainstream, and I feel like they are because they're talking about climate change and like veganism. And if you really listened, I mean, they're like heavy metal, like they scream. You have to really like almost read the lyrics. But I kind of like really enjoy them, and I only heard about them when they became mainstream and when they were discussing or like singing about these sorts of problems. Before, I had no idea who they were. So like, I don't know if that relates to like your question about people becoming mainstream for their voices to be heard or affecting people. But I think again, there are loads of bands out there, different genres, that are talking about what young people are talking about. I don't know if that lightens the mood.
I think
or
it's
not.
cool because does it mean that there's a culture of youth being more engaged with their surroundings and with, I don't know, gender politics and
Living with your parents till you're 40, you'll do that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I do empathise, no, because, you know, I mean, the economic climate's made it really difficult to be creative or be a rebel. Do you know what I mean? Although there's another little factor that I think's changed the whole notion of, you know, protest in music, and that's the aspirations of the young themselves. Because, you know, when I got into music, as naive as it sounds, it did still feel like this kind of anti-establishment thing. But now, I don't know, again, I don't want to tar everybody with the same brush, but it does seem that a lot of people get into music to be part of that very thing that we were against, you know, and it's hard to be a rebel on the red carpet, you know what I mean? I mean, it's all about new values. If you want what the man's offering, then I don't think you can be that radical in the 21st century. If you have new values and you don't want all that, then the world's a really exciting place. And I think that's maybe what it
You can't
takes.
afford to live somewhere like London. Then you're going to be living in Hemden Bridge, or I mean,
Yeah,
I like Hemden Bridge.
You call this living?
Well, yeah, that's a different panel, Don, that we
yeah.
can do. So just on this thing about the commercial mainstream success, sorry I keep coming back to Rage Against the Machine, but for me it's just such a touch point because, again, you have this band writing political lyrics but signed to the biggest record company in the world, which was Sony at the time. And I remember having to put up the posters for that record. Again, it's this picture of this burning monk. And the more you look at it, the less impact it has. So do you think that that's one of the reasons we've not had a big political song in that same sort of main space is going to come in on this in a big way, because we're just desensitized to we see so much violence and horrible things all the time. We're like desensitized to it in a way.
Maybe. I think Rage were something really special because Zach De La Rocha had a very direct voice, but I feel like maybe even 13-year-old me didn't get the message right. Do you know what I mean? People, teenage kids maybe just heard "fuck you," "I won't do you, tell me," and it became potentially the meaning of it. It's sad that because it's such a heavy song and the records are so heavy, probably got lost because they sound good and he sounds angry, but probably 99% of people won't really read into what it's about, and then we're maybe left with it as a parody, angry rock music as a parody of itself. It's maybe not so sincere, or at least, it felt like that for a while, and you got to kind of reclaim something in a different way and be, make sure you're not a parody of something that's been before, and kind of be honest. I think Idols and other punk bands have done that quite well recently by being just brutally honest.
I think I was thinking that because, Don, I was thinking of what you were saying about walking the red carpet. Like, that was definitely kind of this friction there and tension between how can you be a rebel but be on Sony? And the same thing, I remember sitting with Josh Homme from Queens of the Stone Age, and he said you have to be the cancer inside the machine. So there is that kind of like give and take. What were you going to say, Don? You're going to comment on what Space
No, I
was
was
saying?
listening to what my friend here was saying.
Yeah.
I was thinking that it's interesting that when you asked me to do this politics in music, and I thought about its place in the 21st century, and I thought, again, in my position as Radio 6 broadcaster, I hear a lot of politics in the music, a lot of the music that I play, whether it be from somebody like, I don't know, Kate Tempest or Elbow. And it's interesting that you said that because quite often the politic is almost lost in the art. As beautiful as it is, it's almost disguised in that. And maybe in these times, we need those big, bold, brass, fucking slogans that'll galvanize. But then again, that seems like it would feel a bit naive in the 21st century. It's so much more complex now. Do you know what I mean? That would almost be a turn-off if you like, people got the power or something, or fight the, you know what I mean?
But isn't Black Lives Matter just as simple as that? Like,
Yeah, well, it's like I say, it's all that you get into that sort of thing where you can buy the bumper sticker
Yeah.
or wear the T-shirt, and it's like ticking your thing on the social media. And,
Yes.
And really, the times are so dread now that we do need to get proactive. And I don't mean necessarily throwing a fucking Molotov cocktail. Maybe you can throw some good ideas out there or cast a vote. Although that doesn't seem that attractive a proposition these days. And I fucking hate saying that, man. God,
I like
what's
to
a man
think
to
of
do?
music as an empathy machine, right? So that rather than just big bold slogans work, but like it's a song, and music can kind of translate an infinite amount of kind of subtle emotions. So like really the job of a song is to help people feel and give them a story that they can connect with. And so if we're thinking of music and art as an empathy machine for people to kind of to mirror and validate and empower their own kind of reality, then that maybe can be it can be a really powerful thing. But it's more nuanced than just like I oppose this or like fight the power. It's a great slogan, but it's a great song. But
at the time,
now
it's
it
still a
wouldn't mean
great
that
record,
much.
Don.
yeah, no, it is. But you couldn't sing that. Somebody can write that now.
The thing is, you were talking about Rage, and I only remember that lyric, and I being young, didn't take it as like political. I took it as like a "fuck you, mum, I'm going to my," like, I didn't.
I won't do what you tell me.
I won't do
Yeah.
what you tell me. Yeah, I didn't take it as political. Whereas now, like listening to Idols, I'm listening to a lot more of the lyrics than rather than this big like in your face like repetitive like one line like fuck the man or whatever. I'm really like listening and engaging to like the lyrics and what people are saying. So maybe that's a difference because
Yeah, but then that sort of lends itself to this kind of armchair philosophy where you're kind of, oh yeah, that sounds cool. And really, you need people to get off their asses and get involved.
Yeah.
So almost that, the artistry of the protest song is kind of missing the point that you don't really want that. You want people to be fucking angry because there's a lot to be angry about. I mean, Christ knows we need another anarchy in the UK. And I ain't talking about a violent thing necessarily. Maybe it's a creative one. But we need it more than ever, But I don't know, like you said, where is it? I'm not sure. I mean, like I said, there are people out there chipping away, but, we need big moves, man.
I think, and also this is where, like, again, like our age might be a little bit different than them, Don, because I remember, again, like getting some of these records we're talking about, and it was just breathtaking. And
Yeah, but that's
you know,
because it could have that collective synchronized
Yeah.
impact. Nothing has that anymore. Some, Childish Gambino, incredible record, but that was people sort of accessed that over about 2 months. So have you heard it? And we'll download it this week. I've downloaded it. I'll watch it. Whatever. Back in the day, you would have all seen that on. Well, you might not have seen it on Top of the Pops, but you know what I mean. It would have hit you all at the same time, and it would have tremendous energy because of that.
but also music was less disposable then as a cultural item.
Well, it's a downside. I mean, in the 21st century, there's so much of everything that nothing means anything, and I think that's a big problem.
I was about to say it's quite diluting. There is a lot out there. There's probably artists that you've heard of that I've never even heard of. It's very diluted, and there's a lot. Whereas I guess I could be wrong at the time. Like something would come out and it'd be like everyone's listening to that one thing. But whereas now there's like so much. There's probably like artists that the audience have that I've never heard of that I'd be like, wow, they're really political. It's
I was going
great.
to say, my big thing in the 21st century is about getting back to this collective, synchronized experience. It's even made me appreciate sport. And I can't stand sport. I've never been to a football match in my life, but I've realised it's one of the last bastions, and also live gigs. But I realise there is this tremendous need for people to have synchronized experience, and there is an energy that comes out of that, and we need to bring that back into the mix.
I remember, I've said this to people before, I remember going to a gig in like probably 87, and it was Sugar Cubes, Public Enemy, and PIL.
Oh, shit.
And people are like, that is, and so many of my friends, I was telling you before, so many of my friends still remember you playing in Santa Cruz, Big Audio Dynamite. And because if you liked something other than pop top 40 music, you would go. So if you liked hip hop, you'd go. If you were punk, you'd go. So it was kind of this, going back to what you were saying, it was a collective, lots of different kind of more micro cultures, but we were all different.
Yeah.
Can I play devil's advocate?
Oh yeah, please do.
Could it be potentially that you guys are talking like this because you're not essentially involved in that happening right now?
I think I'm saying for myself, I think that could be really true. But I think as I've gotten older, I've gotten less and less and less politically engaged and more disheartened and cynical.
Well, I don't know. I don't like to think of class systems. I think all classes should intermingle. We should fucking ban public schools and everyone should go to school together. So I don't really want to dwell on class and what that means to music. But what I do see now is that there's a much more open dialogue on a lot of things. There's, people are more aware of sexism, they're more aware of racism, they're more aware of politics in general, and that's maybe a good thing, and maybe we didn't have a big sweeping statement, but I don't believe that everyone took anarchy in the UK in the right way, and that evolved, more than necessarily a constant conversation about how we are with each other and how accepting we are to each other.
I think that's a fair comment, that now in the 21st century, everyone is definitely more aware. Now they've just got to get more involved.
Yeah, I
That's
agree.
it.
Yeah, I think
Simple
that
as
sums
that.
up-
There's no excuse for kind of bullshit now. The information is there for all of us to access. It's what we do with that information that'll give it real power or not. But being aware isn't enough either.
Don, do you
That's the
think?
tick on the Facebook thing.
Yeah, Don, do you think that some of the like for example, like I had a question here. How does the reaction of musicians and artists to recent events compare to what we've seen in previous generations, such as punk in the 70s and the anti-war movement of the 60s? I mean, you were there in the heart of the punk stuff. Do you think that's been rewritten a little bit, or was it really as revolutionary as it reads now?
You want me to destroy my own myth? For fuck's sake. Yeah, it's true. Fair to say that punk thing, the UK punk political thing, wasn't as political by half as people think, and that was really down to probably like a couple of bands, between Crass and The Clash, but everyone else was really going for gold, to be honest. Its legacy is undoubted. There's no doubt about that, because we're still talking about it 40 years later. Drives me fucking mad. It wasn't supposed to be like that. And I'd say a sad indictment of the last 40 years. Not to say that nothing's happened, but for whatever reason, we're still talking about that four-letter word.
Well, I think what will be interesting is like this time period we're in now. When you are 60, Space and Simone, you guys will be going, actually, you'll be looking back at this time period with Extinction Rebellion and Simone, like the different cultural and political changes we're talking about, and there'll be a canon of music that will be, and a mythology that's the same as the punk mythology.
Yeah, it's highly likely. You only get that perspective with history and the weight of history and the way we perceive it. So, like, it's just impossible to answer that question whether it's...
Sorry, following through what we've all been saying, I'd sort of add that maybe those moments where you had these subcultural movements that had that global effect have also had their time in the same way that the protest songs of that period have as well. So I don't think those things will happen again, because again, they were created in more innocent times, man.
See, this is where I'm like...
all those subcultural movements of the last 20th century happened because of how little we had, not how much we had.
That's pessimistic, though. Like,
No.
I'd like to think that
hold
it
up a
can
second.
happen.
No, hold up a second. Hold on a second. Get this straight. I'm talking about the subcultures of the last half of the 20th century, which were pretty much style-driven things. And they have had their time, and guess what? Fucking right. Because I'm not being funny. For young people now, much more important to get their heads together than their fucking hairdo. So those things you could, back in the day, that's all we had is music and clothes to express ourselves. Now you guys have got other means to express yourselves, so it's good that you're not wasting your time with all that shit. And the idea of all walking down the road looking like your mates was always fucking conflicted anyway. You know what I mean? You express your individuality, but you all look the same. It was always stupid,
But Don,
it's had its time. It's not a bad thing.
But do you think that because you did all that, kind of chipped away to that now we're in the situation where we can talk more openly about these things, and we are able to have some of these conversations? Without those subcultures, Don, we wouldn't have nothing would have moved forward.
I'm not knocking them. They're all part of who I am.
Oh, yeah.
All I'm saying is they have had their time, and I don't regret it, because I think they would be totally irrelevant and stupid in the 21st century. Especially for young people, man. There's much more important things to focus on. Like how we're going to live and how we're going to do it together. Never mind what kind of trousers you're wearing.
Simone, we're starting to run out of time. So Simone's the last question. I'm starting with you. Right. Do you think music can still inspire change?
Yes. Yes. Do you want me to dive in? Yeah, it is. I mean, I guess I could be wrong, but now I feel like people are merging more as well. Like young people aren't just listening to like one genre that they love and staying amongst their clique. Like people are merging and people are listening to multiple genres, and different like cliques and like tribes, or however you want to call it, are coming together, which is kind of like what I'm seeing, like young people coming together regardless of where they're from, like classes or whatever they listen to or whatever the fuck they wear, it doesn't matter. And I think music is helping that. Maybe it is very diluted. Maybe there are a lot of opinions out there, but I feel like it can promote change, and that it always has.
I think I know, Space, what you're going to say, but same question, my darling. Do you think music can still inspire change?
Yeah, I hope so. Otherwise, probably do something else. But yeah, I think you got to be a bit of an idealist and optimist sometimes, in order to just push yourself out there and believe that there is room for social change. And it's not going to be the defining factor, but it's good to constantly challenge the social norm and to put stories out there. And I think it's the same with TV and movies now as well. You can constantly change what is acceptable by just being honest and putting stuff out there. I hope. Yeah, definitely. Yes, of course.
You're so unjaded. I love it.
No, I am, but I just hide it.
This is the public veneer.
Yeah, super pessimistic, but I prefer. I like to think of myself as a positive nihilist, right?
Oh, I like that.
So
that's a good song title.
You look at things on a cosmic level. We are like this tiny little speck, this little oasis in a vast desert of space. And when you look back in on the world with that perspective and that kind of scale, it kind of, for me, it helps me think, well, what do I want to hold dear to myself, well, you know what? You know, I may as well fucking make use of the time, even though it means absolutely nothing.
Donald, you're the last one on this one, and then we'll
What are we talking about?
Do you think music can still inspire change?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I still believe in music as a tool for social change and, most importantly, personal change. And again, going full circle back to people chipping away. That's how it seems to function these days, is that, you know, it can have an impact, on the individual. And it's, it can keep you emotionally and politically engaged with the planet. You know, if you're listening to the right music. There's a lot of shit out there too. And, it's not just a fucking soundtrack for passive consumerism. You know, I grew up on music that helped me certainly to be all I can be. You know, it was about, changing your mind, not your fucking sneakers. And I still believe that music has that potential. But then that's because I get to travel a bit. In the West, it's a bit problematic. But the world's a big place, man. You know.
All right, so with that, we have a couple minutes here for the audience. Does anyone have any questions for the panel? My assistant will come around.
Yeah, I had a date to go to a Natural History Museum today to see Coldplay, but I'd rather be here. What they're doing, we all saw the news, was them not touring for 2 years or whatever.
Coldplay. A lot of people are glad about that, aren't they?
Well, that's what my friends say. But anyway, are they doing some sort of protest musically?
Apparently so. It's like
tour?
It's all different stuff. Did you read that? I've not heard
I
it.
heard that they stopped touring because it's going to pollute the planet with bad music. No, I'm joking. No, I'm joking. No, I like some of the early stuff.
I've heard you play
but
Coldplay.
I tell you what I don't understand about this stuff about flying and all that stuff is how it's all been put on the individual passenger, and they feel responsible. I am confused about that. You know, as a doctor that's going to fly across to another country to save somebody's life, he should feel guilty because of his carbon footprint. I mean, why is the individual passenger being charged and not the airline? I don't understand that. Can somebody explain that? No? So it's not just me. Okay, good.
It's capitalism, though.
It's capitalism.
It's about the companies.
What isn't? Yeah, what isn't? Is the question. Really? I mean, no, really, if we're going to get serious, what isn't? I mean, that's the heart of most of the problems on the planet, but what are we going to do about that? I'm glad I ain't going to be around to find out.
Don, this is
No, but really, I mean,
Don,
like,
this
you're
is
talking about
getting me
serious
down.
revolution here, right?
I mean, but I'm surprised we've not had a serious revolution, not being funny.
No, but there's so many contradictions in our daily lives in the way we, everything we all do, me included. I'll wake up tomorrow and I'll do shit. And if you strip it down, it's being made by somebody bad or there's something unethical about it. And it's kind of difficult for the individual to operate in those circumstances. And I don't understand why they're not pointing the finger at the top end where they're getting all the money where they could put in the research to work out what... You get what I'm saying? We're kind of giving the corporations a break and we're taking on all the guilt. What the fuck's that
paying
about?
for it, though, too. Though.
What?
Well, I was just going to say, like...
And they get paid for it.
No, I said we have to pay for it.
But they get paid for it. They get the
paid for it.
bonuses. What the fuck? Why am I going to offset my carbon footprint? I mean, I kind of understand the theory, but it's just funny that we've all taken on the guilt ourselves when we're the end of a chain of something that we really can't affect, but the people at the top end can.
You've been raising your hand.
Sorry, where?
So we were talking about people that have a platform using that platform, and you were talking about Architects as an example of a band that you've heard of because of their activism, and then you've gone back to their music.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's a danger of some marketing firm or a label kind of cooking up, how can we make this band more woke as part of a marketing strategy? And would you say that it doesn't matter if ultimately the end goal is that more people hear about that issue, even if that person is using it as like a PR stunt or to get them some positive press?
That's those contradictions, yeah.
Yeah, but me, this is just my opinion. I think the more people hear about this stuff, the better. That's a really, really simple answer, isn't it? But I guess we were talking earlier about being in a bubble, right? Like I was in this massive bubble where everything was great and everything was happy, and I would never have sat on a stage. I'd be like, why are people going there? It's ridiculous. Everything's fine. But as soon as I had heard them, it just went pop. So for me, it's like I don't mind how people get there as long as they're there and they get there and the message is being spread, because I would have still been in my nice little happy bubble if I wasn't a fan of music and I had heard that band. So obviously, yeah, it's contradicting, it's different. There are two sides to it, but I'm on the side of like, okay, well, I heard them and I listened to their music, and now I'm this vegan lesbian. But
I was just thinking about what you were all saying. I mean, there is an argument that says that the very production of music plays into the hands of capitalism, and that's where it gets really messy. You know what I mean? Who is it? I think who knows who Dick Gregory is? He's a famous black activist from the 60s, but he once said that if you want to create a real revolution, stop buying records. You know what I'm saying? Like, where do you stop? I ain't advocating that. I'm saying, but where do you draw that line? You know what I mean? Because ultimately, what's the music industry about? You think it's about educating the people? Let's get real. Do you dig what I'm saying? So it gets very, very weird.
It's always a tough
It's
place.
always been that. Yeah.
It's in our social fabric as folk music.
And it's
in
full
our
of
social
contradictions
fabric.
when you're talking about revolution, but you're making a record for a record company. Inherently, there's a contradiction right there.
Straight away, yeah.
But, like I said, I don't know the answer. I walk my line and I try and hold my head up, but I'm very aware of the contradictions that I face on a day-to-day basis. But I don't want to live in a cave,
But but you make choices, don't you?
Yeah.
You come to
but a lot of them are
places
fucked
like
up, and I
this,
realise that as I'm making them. I'm being
and
honest
you buy
here.
records from an independent store.
I mean, I got
from
Sky.
the person down the road.
What's a man to do?
We have time for one more question, hopefully
Change.
something uplifting.
Well, then this will have to relate to the next discussion about music and politics, because I wanted to make a point and then ask a question. I don't think discussions about music and politics should be confined to protest songs. I think, for example, that it's important that you have 50-50 gender representation at festivals. I think it's important when bands, whether or not they're overtly political, they sign up to campaigns like Love Music, Hate Racism, and of course Rock Against Racism back in the day. When I was a kid, South Africans were asking bands to boycott South Africa. Now Palestinians are asking bands to boycott Israel. So there's a discussion around cultural boycott, So the music and politics discussion should be broader than just protest songs. The second thing is simply to say that there are hundreds of thousands of people all around the world taking to the streets to protest against their governments. In Chile, they're using the songs of Victor Jara, who was murdered in the 70s, a protest singer. And I think that this is reflected in music, including here. The standout moment for most people of Glastonbury was the Stormzy set, which was very political. Fuck Boris, and he always speaks out in solidarity with Grenfell and so on. And actually, I'm pleased that Don mentioned Childish Gambino's "This Is America," but he somewhat dismissed it. I mean, that was the biggest single of last year.
Yeah, no, I didn't dismiss it.
Well, the impact of
That's
it.
the most incredible thing I've seen in the 21st century.
Good. You
but
said.
but what's interesting?
Well, hang on.
is-
Let me finish, because
Yeah, go on,
actually
go on. Yeah, sorry.
you've butted in with most people tonight, Don. I love you, but I'm going to try and finish.
Yeah.
Just to say that I think this is happening, even in the mainstream, even in the West. Do you think, here's the respectful question, and this is not aimed at any of our esteemed panellists, but do you think that people over a certain age who are jaded and who can't find progressive political music in the current moment, do you think it's time for perhaps them to retire?
If they can't find it, absolutely. But as you've acknowledged several things that, like I said, whether it's Stormzy or whatever, and luckily I'm still receptive to those messages, not quite ready to retire yet.
Don't leave us, Dawn.
No, I'm not done with it.
No.
No.
I think we've run out of time now.
Oh, really? Okay, good.
Yeah,
That was
yeah.
a good way to end it.
Yeah, that was
good.
good.
Yeah.
So you guys, we have, if you guys want to say hi, we have some books, we have some vinyl. You can say hi to us. We can sign some stuff for you. It'll just be in the back of the store. And thank you so much for coming tonight. And I have to say thank you to Simone, Space, and Dawn. I love you so much.
Thank you for your time
Thank you
and
so
your
much.
energy.